Hello, I am William Jamal Wright.
And I'm Hattie.
And this is our podcast, HattieJo. What are we doing?
What are we doing?
So, this episode, we're going to talk about, horrible traveling adventures. And this came up, actually, because I specifically have been doing a lot of traveling. I'm actually about to travel again this weekend to good old sunny Florida, down to Tampa to visit old homeboy Patrick. So we will be going. Yeah. But this will actually be the fifth weekend out of six, the last 6 weekends that I will have traveled somewhere. So it has definitely been a little whirlwind.
Exhausting. The only good news is he has not experienced any misadventures with the
yes, it's all been smooth sailing.
So knock on wood for this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be too bad. I'll be just hopping in a plane and one-stop shop. But yeah, so we decided, since we've been doing all this traveling, and also it snowed 10 inches here.
It snowed.
10 inches here in North Carolina last week. So we got a couple of snow days from school or work. It is. Don't go to school anymore. So that was nice and just made me think, man, I've traveled a lot and there's been some really tragic experiences for me with traveling. So I will say that 95% of the time that I travel, I've had some really good experiences, and for the most part, things go the way they're supposed to go. Most of this is from the fact that majority of my travel was with the football team, and we always got nice little curbside service. You just get right up to the airplane and hop on. And
a lot of those things, all of the details and all the thinking is kind of done for you. So you just have to, go where you're instructed to go. Whereas I feel and you're kind of, well, yes, you are responsible for yourself. There's also other adults that will poke and prod you if you're not where you're supposed to be at the right time. So I feel when you're on the team, you need to be on time. But, wherever the meeting place is, if you're 5 minutes late, the team's not going to leave without you. But you are going to get yelled at by a coach or whatever, you know what I mean? So sleeping through an alarm or missing a flight are things that don't really happen because there's that extra layer of someone else being responsible. Whereas a lot of travel, when I hear travel misadventures, they kind of fall in two groups. One category is weather or unforeseen circumstances that are out of the traveler's control. Yes. And then other circumstances that are, for one thing or another, within the traveler's control, but it just didn't happen. Yeah. So, yeah, I feel it prevents it against that second category a little bit.
Yeah. So I would say some of my I have 2 really bad travel experiences.
I'm curious which 2 you're going to choose to share.
But it's only 2. I'm pretty sure you could guess them off of the top of your head.
Is one of them the driving from South Carolina?
Yes, one of them is the driving from South Carolina.
And then is the other one the...
And then the other one is the time that, I was trying to fly to Florida.
Yes.
And there was an ice storm here in North Carolina.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were going to say.
So those are my 2.
Those I would both count as the unforeseen, out of your control events. I don't really think tires blowing is something that you plan for and you just put off.
Oh, I definitely,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, so, but I definitely should have gotten my tires changed before, I should have known to go get my tires changed before, it happened. But in my defense, it wasn't,
extremely beyond their lifespan.
Yeah, but I did have a friend tell me, you should probably go get those changed. And it was probably, 2 months before, I realized I really should have even got them changed.
Amelia, move back.
But one of the less so, not as bad traveling experiences was when I missed my flight from Florida to come back here to South Carolina.
And I think, what group was that fall into?
Well, this was definitely like I would say it was my fault. In that I overslept a little bit. I've overslept probably like 2 or 3 times for flights coming back from Florida. And they were all because like we booked the flights way too early on Sunday morning. And then the next thing you know, I'm waking up and I'm like,
crap.
Dang it, this isn't good. Missed my flight. Mm-hmm. So one time I actually had to buy like a $300 flight. But every other time, like Southwest, done a great job being like, oh, like we'll just put you on standby for this flight, or like we'll make sure that you get home.
That's good.
So good shout out to Southwest for making sure that I always got back here to North Carolina. And I've definitely learned never book the other flight on a Sunday morning to come back from Florida. Yeah, I'm not the earliest person to wake up anyway. So
yeah, but we've done a lot better coming back from Florida and booking our flights at more reasonable afternoon times.
True, and you've never been with me on a flight where like I tried to book it early.
That's what I'm saying. We've booked it for later in the afternoon specifically because you've said like, let's shoot for a little later. So, you've mentioned all sorts of travel misadventures. Tell us those top 2. Start with one of those 2 stories.
Oh, so I will start with the one that happened first.
Okay.
That was my flight down to Florida from DC, or not from DC, but from North Carolina. So it was around New Year's, and I had planned to go visit both of my good friends, Tyler Robinson and Rob Sherman. We're all going to meet in D.C. for New Year's that year. And so we were like, all right, well, I normally go see Patrick on New Year's, but since I'm going to be hanging out with Rob and Tyler this year, I'm going to go down and see Patrick a little earlier, and then I'll come up right before New Year's to hang out with T and Rob. And so the night before, or there was a huge storm coming up the East Coast. So like it was all over the news. And like,
so you were in Tampa?
I was in North Carolina.
In North Carolina. Okay.
And it was all over the news. And so I'm like, all right, well, they haven't canceled my flight. Like if I can just make it to the airport, like I'll be fine to get there. So I got to the airport in plenty of time. The next thing I know, they had like pushed back my flight. And so I was like, dang it, this is not good. What am I going to do? And so I waited like another 45 minutes.
How long was the flight pushed back? Like, was it the type of thing where it was already 8 p.m. and it was pushed back till 11
No, this was morning. It was in the morning. Like, it was a really early morning flight down.
Okay.
So I think I had a connection through Charlotte.
So when your flight was delayed, were you thinking you were missing your connection? Is that why you were like, what am I going to do? Okay.
Well, I'm at the airport here in North Carolina, and they're like, well, like we're putting back the travel to Charlotte that will then get you to Florida. So therefore, like, we don't think you're going to make your connection flight. So, like, we can either try and put you on a flight tomorrow, or we can try and, like, work it out so we can get you down to Florida at some point today. I was like, well, like, I'm already here. Like, let's try and get me down to Florida today. So they're like, all right, we're going to send you up north to Philadelphia, and then we're going to get you on a flight from Philadelphia down to Tampa. So I'm like, all right, like, this may work. What could go wrong? This might work. Because, like, up in Philadelphia, like, it hadn't started, like, the storm hadn't hit
yet.
But it was supposed to hit that afternoon in Philadelphia. So I was like, I can get up there, get in, get out, like, I'll be fine. So I get up to Philadelphia. And
so you did make it to Philadelphia.
I did make it to Philadelphia. I was there for, I think my connection was like 2 hours later. So I'm waiting, and then all of a sudden it starts snowing in Philadelphia. And I'm like, this is not good. This is really not good.
I'm even further away than I was before.
Yeah, I was already pissed that they had sent me up north in order to go down south.
Mm-hmm.
But that's
just how the airlines worked when they're trying to find the open flights and all that.
So I get to Philadelphia, gets to the afternoon, they're like, we have canceled the flight. Like, we're not flying any more flights out of here that are going south. Like, it's just not happening. So I'm like, well, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do? So I'm sitting at the airport. I'm like talking to Patrick. I'm talking to my girlfriend at the time who lived in D.C. So I'm like, what am I going to do? Because I do not want to stay at this airport like all night sleeping here at the airport. So we come up with this crazy cockamamie like idea. It was like, hey, like I talked to the airline. They're like, well, if I can get to DC, like flights are flying out of DC. So like, would you then be able to like take, if I could like get to DC, like could I get on a flight out of like DC to get to
And so
Florida?
wait, just to make this all clear, you originally were going from North Carolina to Florida to DC? Or were you going back from Florida back to North Carolina?
No, I was going to Florida.
So now you were going North Carolina, Florida, DC. And now you're in Philadelphia and you're going to get to DC to go down to Florida and then come back to DC.
So I go down to DC.
Many miles later.
I took a train. Yeah,
nice.
I took a 2-hour train down to DC.
So you have been on a train before?
Yes. Took a 2-hour train down to DC.
Trains for the win.
Stayed in DC for a day and a half. Because the next flight that they had out of DC to Tampa was literally a day and a half.
Good thing you had like a girlfriend in DC.
Well, otherwise,
I
would have just been stuck in Philadelphia.
Or stuck in DC, like.
No, I would have just stayed in Philadelphia. Yeah, I would.
Okay. If you had no.
Yeah, there was no
DC,
way. Yeah, there was no way I would have went to DC
All
without like the plan
knowing
in
someone.
place.
Yeah. Okay.
So a day and a half later, I flew down to Florida. Meanwhile, like I don't have my suitcase at this point because they
had checked it. I'm sure.
Yeah, I had checked the suitcase because I needed a lot of luggage. It was going to be a long time before like.
Right, because you were doing that big trip.
So I actually have them send my luggage to Florida, to Patrick's place, so that like I wouldn't have to worry about it, and like I could get it in Florida and just leave from Florida and bring it back to DC with me.
Did that end up happening?
Yes, that did end up happening.
Wow.
But I was, because I had like a little carry-on bag with me, so I had some clothes.
That's good.
For the day and a half that I was in DC, but actually ended up making it to DC or making it to Florida. Hung out with Patrick for a couple of days. Then flew up to hang out with Tyler and Rob for New Year's, and
so it all worked out.
It all worked out, but it was definitely a
snowmageddon.
Yeah, a whirlwind of traveling. But how about you? Do you have any crazy traveling?
I wouldn't say I have two. I have two stories that are kind of crazy, but I don't think they have any. I think they both pale in comparison to your stories.
Well, this is not a competition.
I know, but
I'll win.
This is what I have to live with. It's okay. I'm very competitive too. So anyhow, one of my travel stories was I spent a summer doing a fellowship in Sweden, a research fellowship. So I was at the University of Chalmers, and that was really fun. And one thing that was cool is it was a split campus. So I actually lived on campus, but I was subletting a room from a student that was away. But the campus that I worked at was far away. So Sweden has a really awesome, public transportation system, buses, trains, and ferries, because I was in Gothenburg and it's on all sorts of canals and waterways. So they also have a really nice online system that has everything in Swedish, but also everything in English, as well as several other languages. So foreign travelers can still easily navigate the system. So you can kind of go online and put in your destination and where you are, and it'll tell you the closest bus or train stations, and then you'll go to the correct number and get on the right train, and like you'll have to take off, get on some different ones, stuff like that. So anyway, my daily commute, I had 2 buses and 1 ferry. And the first thing I just have to point out, I would take 1 bus, and I could walk if I felt like it. It was like a 2-minute bus ride and maybe a 10 or 15-minute walk. The second bus was 30 minutes, and then the ferry was another 15, 20 minutes. But one thing I want to point out, the ferries it was just such a perfect example of the difference in lifestyle between Americans and Sweden. So, for instance, the ferries were, I am sure if they were in America, they would have a million more safety features, and it would be very inefficient. So in Sweden, the ferries pull up to dock with their back end, and there's nothing that hooks them to the dock. There's no like rigging or lane they go in. They just kind of come up close, and people with their bikes just hop on. And the crack is sometimes between the dock and the ferry is sometimes a foot, sometimes it's 2.5 feet, sometimes it's like right up against, but the whole time the boat's on the waves, you just hop on. There's no handrails, like there's no nothing. And you can see clearly that it would be very easy for someone who's on their phone or not paying full attention to fall into the water. But nobody does, because everybody has personal responsibility, and they're like, okay, it's time to get on the ferry, like, this is dangerous, I need to pay attention, I'm going to pay attention and hop on. And it worked great. I was there for 3 months and never once saw anybody fall in. Like, of course there was, like, railing from the dock and big life rafts, not life rafts, what are those circular things that you throw?
Lifesavers?
Lifesaver things. At every single ferry station, in case someone did fall in. But it's just the type of thing, like, if this had been in America, I guarantee, like, the boat would have to come up, there would be something that clips on to, like, physically attach it there, there'd be handrails, there'd be signs, because I'm sure someone would have sued someone.
Exactly. I think that's the point, like, you have to, take away the risk. The risk of being sued, like, negligence. Right. Because people are like, oh, I was on my phone not paying attention, that's your fault that you had negligent. No, because, like, people... no. Because, like, people are like, hey, like, you should make this as safe as possible. Like, there should not be a reason why, like, I can have bodily harm to me because
you're not paying attention?
No, like, anyway. A less coordinated person could definitely be on this, like, boat and try to jump over and then, like...
That's exactly the point, though.
Hurt themselves.
That's exactly the point. In Sweden, they value efficiency and speed over safety and availability for everyone. Okay. I absolutely agree. There were plenty of times in my commute that I had to walk a long distance. Never once was there, like, a handicap accessible lane. So, like, if you were in a wheelchair, you would have been screwed. I don't know what you would have done. So I completely agree with you. It's a value system, and I'm not trying to say one value system is better than the other. But it's clear that both systems have very different values. Okay. And whereas, just like you're saying, you feel like it's a safety issue, whether someone's paying attention or not. That's just my example. But there's many other safety issues that have nothing to do with how much you're paying attention, or you know. And so here in America, we are willing to sacrifice quickness and efficiency because we value it being accessible to everyone, and we value it being as safe as possible. Yeah. so that there's like no undue risk.
And companies value not being sued.
And right, and that's why it's so safe, because when things do happen, people sue because it's not safe. So anyway, it was just a very stark example of the cultural differences. So that was really interesting to experience. But anyway, that was a whole side tangent. The way that this particular route worked is on my way to work, I got on one stop and it would ferry directly across to the stop I would get off. On my way home from work, instead of just going back and forth, it went in a loop. So never once did it go like forwards and backwards. Mm-hmm. So the way to work, I would get on, I'd ferry across and get off. And the way home from work was a much longer ferry. And I would ferry across the water the other way, kind of across, and then up the side, making many stops up the side. And so it was the last stop where I would get off on my way home that was where I would get on in the morning. So unbeknownst to me, so this was my first week in the office. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday went great, no problems. Mm-hmm. Friday, I wanted to stay late in the office a little bit, not too late. So again, in Sweden, where I was, the sun in the summer is out for 23 hours a day, and it's dark only from 11 p.m., like 11:30 to 1:30 a.m. Mm-hmm. And it's the converse of that in the winter. So in the summer, everybody in Sweden is like, the sun is here, we're going to leave work really early and enjoy the sunlight. Mm-hmm. So I was more, well, first of all, it was still my first week, so I was still kind of adjusting. And so I thought that staying in the office until 5 or 5:30 wasn't really staying late, but compared to everyone there, it was staying way late on Friday. So I stayed till like 5:30. There's little shops that you can get food at. I went and I got like dinner at one of those little shops, so now it's kind of like 6:15-ish, and I go back to the ferry. Mm-hmm. And I'm expecting to get on the ferry across the water, and then all the way up the coast to my stop. Get on the ferry, go across the water, I'm just sitting there playing a game on my iPad, and the conductor comes up to me and is like, this is the last stop, you need to exit. And I was like, oh no, I'm several stops up. He's like, no, it's Friday afternoon, this is our last round, and this is where we dock the boat, like this is the last stop. And I was like, oh, I wasn't aware of this. I thought that, all the other days it kept going. And he's like, yeah, we have early closure on Fridays and like Saturdays and Sundays. Because again, they're trying to enjoy as much time outside as possible. So I'm sure this was posted on the web somewhere, but I didn't read or know. Yeah. I just assumed that Monday through Friday schedule was going to be the same. And I also didn't think that, 6:30 was so early to be, but that was just my cultural misunderstanding. And so the good news is, because it was just all along the coast, I had seen, there's tons of, architecture, European architecture, has tons of old stuff, tons of very unique stuff. So as I would go on the ferry, I could see all the landmarks that I was passing. And it was beautiful, and I would watch and everything. So I was like, well, so first of all, I also didn't have a cell phone or any wireless or GPS activity.
System. Yeah.
Any system. So anytime I would navigate anywhere, I would either be at the office or at the room I was renting, which did have Wi-Fi, and I'd plan my route and like take a screenshot on my iPad. But when I wasn't in one of those two places, I didn't have any Wi-Fi or anything. And so this was not on my plan. I did not have a little screenshot of like, well, I can get on this bus, which will take me to there, and then I can walk over to here and get on that bus, which will take me home. So I was like, well, I could try to hop on some random buses. Like, I kind of recognize some of these names in Swedish on, like, the sides. Because at the bus stops and train stops, they have little maps. Mm-hmm. But they're not extensive. They're just for, like, the nearby region. Yeah. So I'm like, well, it's not going to get dark till, like, 11:30. It's only 6:45. Like, I'll just walk. How far could it be? Turns out it was like a 2.5, 3 hour walk.
What?
Because the ferry goes so much faster, and also the roads are not directly by like the edge of the canal. So I would have to like walk along the roads, and it was perfectly safe. Like, I was on the sidewalk, there's little shops, like it wasn't dangerous or anything, but the landmarks look much closer together when you're drifting on the water than when you're walking between them. Oh my gosh, it took forever. I was like walking, I was like, thank God I ate dinner because I would be so hungry. So that was my Friday night, like just walking home, unplanned. But I made it thanks to all the landmarks. But like,
no, my gosh, this is the last stop.
Yeah, and again, thankfully in Sweden, everybody is taught beautiful English. So he came up to me originally, and he spoke to me directly in English because I think he realized, because they have little they announce each upcoming station in Swedish, so it was clear, and everybody else knew to depart. So I think he knew, like, oh, this person doesn't get it. But so it was really, again, I was really thankful that I was able to communicate with him so well. I remember in Belgium, that was a bad travel story that first day. Oh, I forgot all about that. Maybe that will be my other story. It was not nearly as easy to communicate with some of the drivers of the transportation systems. So, anyway, so that was my long hike home. Tell us about your long hike home from South Carolina.
Yeah, so one of my cousin Trey, who's I'm very close with, he was graduating from high school.
Good job, Trey.
Also, later on that weekend, I think his graduation was on a Thursday. And yeah, it was on a Thursday. And then on Friday, I was actually traveling out for Rob Sherman's bachelor party. And so I was like, you know what? I'll drive home on Thursday morning, spend all day at home, go to Trey's graduation, and then just drive back that evening because it's only about 3 hours from Durham to Duncan, and like graduation ended about 8:15 or so. So drive home, everything's great. Hang out with my grandmother. We go to graduation. It's a beautiful evening. A little hot, but nothing out of the ordinary for a spring day in South Carolina. So I didn't bring my phone charger.
Ooh,
so I'm like, it'll be all right. Like, I'm on 85. Like, how bad could it really be? And like, I'm not like texting anybody.
No, and he knows the route. It's not like you're using your GPS either.
So I get on 85 and come back. It's like 9
p.m.
15 or so.
15.
Driving back past Charlotte. And once you get past Charlotte on 85, you get to like Concord area, and then there's just like a strip of like 85, and there's nothing around. Like absolutely nothing around.
Stuff horror dreams are made of. Like horror movies.
So all of a sudden I hear a pop. Do. So
this is at 9:15ish?
No, this is like 10:30.
Okay, because you've made it past to the Concord.
So I'm like,
no man's land
great.
Area.
So I pull over to the side of the road. I'm like, all right, my tire's busted. Like, this sucks. So for like 15 to 20 minutes, like I literally tried to change my tire on the side of the road. Because I pulled off far enough. But because because the car jack that I had, it wasn't like one of those heavy duty ones. It was just like literally you have to be on like very solid ground, and like there's just not a lot of room for error. So I tried to change my tire, and it didn't work. So I'm like, dang it, like what do I do now? So a truck comes pulling up, and the truck stops and is like, hey, like, are you alright? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, is there any way you can like call somebody or like come and help me out?
So is your phone completely dead at this point, or what's the deal with your phone?
Oh yeah, my phone is like completely dead at this point. It was like on 1% as I'm like trying to like flash a light so that I can
change
see.
The tire.
So I can try to change the tire. And then it goes out.
pulls out. So you're like, well, damn it.
Yeah. So truck stops. It's like really hard for us to communicate because there's cars going by, and the guy just is like, forget this. Like, I'm getting out of here. Because, like, you literally never know about somebody.
Right.
So, like, the guy in the truck, he takes off, and I'm like, all right, well, guess I gotta walk. So, I'm thinking, like, literally if I go, like, maybe one or two, like, exits, I'll be able to find a store.
Gas station or something.
Gas station or somewhere I can charge my phone and call my insurance company. They can send somebody. So I walk up to the next exit. I get off on this exit. It was a long ramp to get off the exit. And I literally go walking like down the street, and like it's after midnight at this point, and everything is closed. So I'm like, what do I do?
Midnight,
what do I do?
no phone, everything's closed, and now I'm going to walk away from my car with a broken tire.
So I go back down to the highway. I'm at 85 North, and I just start, I'm like, all right, well, I guess I gotta just keep going. So I'm walking, I'm like jogging, walking. I'm getting really sweaty, jogging, walking. I probably walked like at least 3 miles. And then I get to like this area where it's starting to like, you can see some light.
The light at the end of the road.
Yeah, and it's definitely like, I still gotta get like at least half a mile to go. At least. And then this guy pulls up and he's like, hey.
Is he in a truck or just a regular car?
He's in like a regular truck. So he pulls up and he's like, hey, I saw you back, like I saw your car back there with the lights, man. It looks like you've been walking for a while.
Oh my God.
You want to ride up to the store up here? I was like, you know what? Like, this guy could very well, like, take me and kill me. But at this point, like, I don't want to get there because I don't want to walk no more. So the guy takes me up to the Love's truck stop. It's called LOVE truck stop. And it's right close to Statesville, North Carolina. So I get to the truck stop. The first thing I do is I buy a car charger for my phone. And then I literally asked one of the clerks at the store, I'm like, hey, can I like use your phone to call my insurance company so that they can send a guy out to change my tire? And they're like, sure. So I get on the phone with my car insurance, and they're like, can you tell us where the car is? I'm like, it's by mile marker 55 on 85. And they're like, there is no mile marker 55. I'm like, I'm telling you, it's by mile marker 55. I saw mile marker 55. And they're like, there is none. I'm like, well, it's close to this exit. Because I know I got off on this exit. I went up and walked around. And they're like, all right, well, I think hopefully we can be able to find you. And so,
hopefully. That's comforting.
Yeah, so I asked the lady at the clerk at the store, I'm like, is there any way that you guys have like an iPhone charger here that I could like charge my phone while like
I'm waiting.
While the taxi, because I had to call a taxi to come and get me.
To take you back to your car.
To take me back to my car. So we finally get a hold of the tow truck.
So does the clerk say yes, there's a phone?
Yes.
Okay.
So we finally get a hold of a tow truck company that can come out, but they're like, it's going to be at least an hour and a half before we get there. So I'm like, all right. So at this time, it's like 1 a.m. And I finally get back to my car. Like, I had to call this lady or a taxi company. She came out, gave me a ride back to my car. I waited another like 30 minutes to get for the tow truck guy to get there. He finally gets there, changed my tire, in and out. If I would have had my phone, I would have probably been,
place, yeah.
It would not have taken so long. But I finally get back on the road.
What, you mean you wouldn't have had all that walking and all that?
So I finally get back on the road at 2 a.m. So, drive for
nice
another...
little 4-hour
excursion,
10 p.m. to 2 a.m.
So, I finally drive, and I'm going, and literally, as I'm driving, I'm like, what are the chances that another one of my tire blows out?
And so are you thinking back to your friend telling you?
No, I'm just
what made you have this thought?
Well, I'm just as I driving, I'm like, I got all of these tires around the same time. So there is a definitely high possibility that the other one might blow out. But I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna take a chance.
Can't do anything about this. I mean,
and my phone is at least charged. I have a car charger. I can charge my phone. So get driving. Another 2 hours in.
So how far away are you at this point?
I'm probably about 40 minutes from Durham
so
at this
close,
point.
so close.
So this is at about 4 a.m. My other tire busts out. So luckily this time I have my phone. So I called the car insurance. Hey.
Remember me?
It wasn't the same person.
I know, just
But they're like, all right, well, we can't do anything about it now. The only car, the closest company, they don't open until 6 a.m. So you're just gonna have to be here until 6 a.m. when they can get there, and then it's another 30 minutes for them to drive out to where you are.
Mm-hmm.
So you're gonna be there for a while. And I'm like, all right, that's fine. Just
you have no choice.
So I literally just sit in my car, listen to some talk radio, sports. This is where I realized that Mike Golick Jr. He has a radio show on ESPN that comes on before Mike and Mike came on. So literally just hang out in my car, nap a little. I didn't even nap. I was just furious. That I was stuck in a car. So finally get to the truck, gets there. The tire place actually wasn't that far from the exit that I was on. It just they didn't have it just took a while to get the tow truck there. Mm-hmm. So they took me up to the car place or to the tire place. The tire place, I got there 7:15, but they don't open until 8. So I have to wait another 45 minutes.
Mike and Mike now.
Yeah. So finally at 8 a.m. they see me, they get me. I got 2 tires that morning just so I could put my spare back in the trunk.
Mm-hmm. That's smart.
So I got 2 tires. Finally left. I think I got back to Durham around 9:30 or something. I was absolutely exhausted.
12 hours of walking and waiting and
so I finally made it back.
Yeah,
I finally made it back to Durham, and it was definitely one of those long trips.
Things that can go wrong will. Huh?
Yes.
Oh, well, you made it. Thank goodness. Oh, man. So the other travel story that I was going to share is a little different. It definitely falls under the umbrella of things that I could have done differently. And it's short, but I think it's funny. So when I was a freshman in high school, that summer after freshman year, my dad, my stepmom, myself, and one of my friends went to Italy for 2 weeks. And so this was a big treat. Not only, this was the first time I had been to Europe, but I also got to bring one of my friends. So it was going to be awesome. I was so excited. So I think it was the way home. I don't think it was on the way to Italy, but I remember one of the airports. So, okay. So the major thing here is I did not have a cell phone yet. I was a freshman. Or I did have a cell phone. I had just gotten a cell phone. I was a freshman. It was after my freshman year in high school. Mm-hmm. So I had just gotten a cell phone. This was all great. I also had a boyfriend. Everything was great, except poor Hattie was going to go away for 2 weeks. However was she going to last without talking to her boyfriend?
Mm.
So on the way home, as soon as we get somewhere that I have cell phone service, because of course my dad is not buying any of these international plans, like absolutely not. As soon as possible, we're back on U.S. soil, but we still have, since we were living in Colorado, we probably flew in to one of the airports in New York or a major hub on the East Coast, and we still have a whole nother 4-hour flight to get home.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've just gone a transatlantic flight, so we're all exhausted, but there's a big layover. And so I decide, like, I want to call my boyfriend, and I don't want to do it sitting here next to my dad. So I wander off to talk on the phone. And
you left your friend?
Yeah, well, she was doing the same thing, basically. But I think she may have stayed sitting there, or she may have been reading, or... I told her the plan, and she was fine with the plan. I am a pacer, so if I am, like, talking on the phone, you know my old apartment, how you could walk in a circle around? Like, I would often talk to the phone, on the phone with my mom, and just, like, walk in a circle around that. So anyway, I am talking on the phone, and I'm just pacing aimlessly throughout the airport, paying no attention to what time it is, no attention to where I am, because I wasn't really trying to walk to anywhere. I was just trying to, like, walk around.
Yeah.
Stretch my legs since we had been on such a long flight and get on another flight. Talking away, blah, 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 all about our trip, blah, 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 miss you, blah, blah. Next thing I hear over the loudspeaker is, Miss Hattie Cutcliffe. Miss Hattie Cutcliffe, please report to gate C44. Miss Hattie Cutcliffe, this is the final call. And I'm like, oh crap, like, that's me! You never hear
gotta go, babe.
Yeah, your own name. So then I'm trying to find out, like, where I am and where I'm supposed to go. And then, like, 2 or 3 minutes later, I hear, Hattie, this is your father. Get here now. Over the loudspeaker, and I'm just like, this can't be happening. Oh, no. It was really embarrassing. But all's well that ends well. I got there, they held the flight for me, and I got on. And...
Hattie, this is your father. Get here now. It worked, Britt. You got it there.
So, yeah, like I said, there's no one to blame but me on that one.
Well, I guess nothing, like, truly went wrong.
Yeah, no, just silly teenagers being silly teenagers. So.
Alright, well, I think that is it, ladies and gentlemen.
Hopefully, if you have any travel plans coming up, they go much smoother, much nicer than the ones we've described. So safe travels, everyone, and...
Stay warm.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
Alright, bye.